Today, I just want to talk about creativity. And today, I'm not going to be having any form of structured conversation. So, it's pretty much going to be me just speaking my thoughts. So, I would like to apologize ahead of time if there are going to be long pauses and me reconstructing or rephrasing some things I've said. Because right now, I'm just going to talk freely, which is how I really enjoy talking. And for those people that have been following ProUp Masterclass for a while, you'd realize that the format of presenting the podcast has changed. I think over the past 6 or 7 podcasts. In the past, I used to start by introducing myself and saying, hello, you're welcome to ProUp Masterclass. Hello, people, you're welcome to ProUp Masterclass. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi. And in today's class, we are going to be talking about this. And I stopped doing that. I introduce myself now at the end of the podcast, not in the beginning anymore. And I had a reason for doing that. And my reason for doing this is I realized that the class became too classroom structured. So it was very hard for me to talk about things from a very leisurely approach, from a very informal approach, which is, as I said, how I like to talk. So with the initial format, I always felt like I was talking to a group of students as opposed to sharing my thoughts with my friends. And so I had to change the approach that put me in this position where I had to say in today's class and just start off by just talking about experiences I've had and thoughts I have had. So today I'm just going to talk about my thoughts on creativity and academics. And as I said, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but I really feel I have some thoughts about it. And you see, I have a speaking engagement sometime this week in about 2 days' time, and they called me to ask that I share with them my slides. And this is something that happens a lot when I have speaking engagements. They always ask I share my slides. And I always tell them I don't have slides. I don't have slides. I don't come with pre-prepared slides. I would rather not have slides. I would rather just talk about my thoughts and have a very free conversation rather than a teaching session or a lecture. I know them and say, oh, people would like slides. They like something they would live with. And I said, I would prefer if they made their own slides from what they hear me talk about. That way, that slide is personal to you. You're writing it in words you understand. So if you have to draw, the best way for you to remember is to draw something, then draw it in the way that you understand, without it being something that is so subjective to my own views. I really would feel better if people were to create their own slides. And just, if it's one word that sticks with you, that is your one word slide. If you want to write a paragraph, it's always amazing when I speak and people have their notes filled. I'm like, I don't even think I could have notes filled from anything I've said so far. But for this person, they've been able to distill it so much into so many words, or that's called distilling. I don't even know, but they've been able to elaborate on what I've said and put it in so many words, and that makes sense to them. So for them, it's like 6 to 7 pages of a jotter. That's fine, as long as it's something you can relate to. I would rather do it that way. And so, there are a lot of people insist on slides, so I just cook up something and slap something together and give it to them. But for me, in my heart, I really pray that nobody goes by those slides I give out and go by what I actually say, because those slides, a lot of them are very half thought out. But my thoughts are very intimate, and what I do in the present when people listen to me is more original. It's closer to how I truly feel. And that's why I prefer people listening to me than having the mind that they would go home with a slide that I prepared intentionally for them, because I don't prepare slides intentionally. I do it as an activity I really don't like doing, so I don't really put my heart into it. So just in case you have me come to speak to you, speaking engagement, please don't depend on my slides. Pay attention to what I say. But this forming a basis for what I want to talk about today. It's about creativity and academics. And it's so sad that one of the traps that creative people fall into is this draw or invitation to join the academic community once your creativity is noticed. Once a person is identified as a creative and is consistently creative, one of the first invitations you're going to have is to come and teach your creativity. So you have a lot of creative people, whether painters, poets, writers, novelists, singers, instrumentalists, dancers. One of the first things when they come to the limelight is you have an institution approach them, a learning institution, a school, say, can you come and teach us this? Your ideology to your art, to your writing, to your poetry, to your dance style. Can you come and teach? So you have a lot of creative people say, oh, I was invited to come and speak at Oxford University and speak at Harvard and speak at whatever Ivy League university. And some of them have long-term engagement, so they go there every month. Some of them every week. Some of them have an associate professorship, so they go there and they go there to teach. But I feel like one of the first things that kills creativity is the rigidity of academics. I truly feel that. I feel like a creative person begins to die once you turn them into an academic. Because academics are people that have answers. People with answers. Academics are so result driven. What drives an academic is seeing a challenge and trying to solve it and coming up with an answer. So to an academic, you are not an academic if you do not have answers. You're not a true academic if you don't have answers. Academics take pride in having the answers that other people do not have. They take pride in being custodians of answers. They take pride in the fact that I have the answers. Nobody has the answers. So I'm going to go there and teach them how to arrive at the answers. Teach them how to arrive at the answers. So academics are custodians of answers. There's a lot of pride in the fact that they know what you do not know. And they spend time knowing and solving problems. So they see a problem and they approach it with a why is this problem there? And then they solve it. And then they can tell you why they came up with that answer. Why that answer? Why that answer is the right answer. That's a lot of what academics is about. Creativity, on the other hand, is not about answers. The creative person is not result driven. Is not answers motivated or motivated. Creativity is about freedom. The creative person is motivated by the freedom to do. And that's why I believe that creative people do not make good teachers, because they do not approach things with the mind of solving a problem. They do not approach things with the mind of arriving at an answer. So when you ask a creative person, why did you do this thing that way? It's a very difficult thing for a creative person to articulate. Why? Why is a frustrating question for a creative person, because they don't know why. Any true creative that is not pretentious doesn't know why. A creative doesn't ride on the wave of why. A true creative rides on the wave of why not. Why not is what drives the creative. Why not? So the creative doesn't approach something because he has a problem with it. He doesn't change something because he has a problem with it. No. It doesn't need to have a problem for the creative to work. However, for the academic, there needs to be a problem to solve before they can work. But the creative doesn't need to have a problem. So when you ask the creative why, what you ask him is, what's the problem you had with it? But the creative cannot tell you because he didn't have a problem with it. The creative works because he has the freedom to. A creative doesn't construct to solve problems. A creative deconstructs because he can. Creative do things because they can. The biggest answer or the biggest asset for a creative is not the answer. Unlike the academic, the biggest asset for the creative is the freedom. Why not? Why not? So when you put a creative in an academic environment, you constrain the creative to tell you why and how. And these are things that the creative doesn't bother him or herself with. The creative doesn't spend time thinking about the how or why. And that's why for me, it actually used to be a challenge teaching people design. When I was active as a designer, I had a lot of young people come to me and say, teach me design. I would like to learn, teach me. But I found out it was something hard to articulate. So they asked me, sir, why did you use this? Why did you use that? Why did you use this? A lot of it was hard to articulate. And it seemed like a silly answer to just say, this felt right. But to a creative, there's no truer answer than it feels right. But the academic wants more explanation. You can't just go based on a feeling. Feelings don't solve problems. There must be a theory. There must be an ideology. But the creative works with a phreology. A phreology. It feels right. Why not try it? When you force the creative to be articulate, You put the creative in a prison of words and reason. And anything that imprisons a creative destroys the creative. You see, I worked in branding for a very long time. And it is interesting how pretentious a lot of my work as a brand consultant was. See, working in branding, in the design end of branding, was very pretentious because sometimes I work from how something feels. When I design a logo or brand identity system, a lot of times I just said this feels right. But then there was this need to come up with a brand guide that talks about your thought process and how things work and a lot of it that I did was after the fact. After the fact. Not truly out of a sense of knowing the why. A lot of it was after the fact of it feeling right. Why that font feels right. Why that color feels right. Why that shape feels right. Creativity is not a science. It really isn't. And so I realized that after creating, a lot of times I'll go back to try to find a why. It was very anti-migraine. The creative is not an academic. The creative is a rebel. The creative thrives on deconstructing. Not because he doesn't like the construction, but because he has no constraints. The creative is a rebel. Is a rebel. So when you bring the creative to the classroom to teach, what you do is stop him or her from expressing. And you want them to teach answers. I believe the best way to learn from a creative is to observe. You do not bring the creative to the classroom. You go and meet the creative in the field. Whatever their field is, whether on the stage, whether in the studio, whether in the wild, wherever it is, if you're going to learn from a creative, you must go to the creative and watch their process. In watching their process, you must now articulate what you think you learn from their process. You must use your own words and form your own slides and come up with your own answers. You must have your own takeaways from watching a creative. A creative is like a bird, like an eagle that flies. An eagle cannot articulate how it flies, cannot even tell you why it can soar so high and glide through the sky so easily. It just knows that it feels right. It feels right. Doesn't articulate it. The academic must go into the wild and watch the creative and watch the eagle who represents the creative now and watch how the eagle takes off and note down what they see. That's what the academic must do. You note down and see when the eagle glides and when it dives and when it soars. The academic is the one that has the burden and the onus of finding out the facts, not the creative. The creative must be left to express and observe the creative. Do not bring the creative to the classroom. Make the creative space your classroom. You see, when you go to a lot of educational institutions, higher institutions, you see a lot of creative people there. They've become the academics. But one thing you find out is that from being constrained, they've become angry. They've become angry. They've become reclusive. And they've become egotistic. And that's why when it seems like you go to the academic environment, go to universities, some of the most brilliant minds are the most irritable, most antisocial. I believe a lot of these people are creatives that have lost their ways. Creatives that have been taken out of their natural environment and they've been put in classrooms. And every time they go to the classroom to try to teach, they feel a resistance which they have to force their way through. And when you do that every single day, you become angry. You become opposed to your students, whom you are meant to serve. You become egotistic. As a way of covering up your inability to express your why. So every question becomes a challenge. When they ask you questions, you see it as being challenged. Because you are not in your environment. It's a problem why the academic environment has become a very tense environment for a lot of students. The observer should be the academic. A person who can observe and is drawn by the fact of observing the ego. Stop inviting the ego to teach how it flies. Because it can't. And the more you try to do it, the more likely you are going to be pecked by the ego. I really don't believe that creatives are meant to be in schools teaching. I don't believe it. I don't think so, but there are too many of them in schools teaching. Too many of them, the literary arts teaching. Because they wrote a best-selling book. Immediately, they are asked to come and teach people how to write. But they do not know how to teach how to write. They do not even know how they are writing. They do not know why they chose that subject matter, no matter how much they try to articulate it. They are driven by the why not. The why not is hard to articulate. I think once we come to a place where we begin to truly understand this, the school will truly become a learning environment again. And this is where I believe that even if you're going to have creatives in the academic environment, what you must do is simulate as closely as possible their natural environment. And then people come to watch them do their thing while taking notes. This mentality that classroom must be someone standing in front of you and talking repeatedly, the faulty one, the skewed one. Sometimes the classroom must be the most silent place where we just watch and observe. I think that's the best way to get the best out of creatives. There are too many frustrated creatives that are being forced and have their arm twisted to have validations that don't really matter to them. To the typical academic, having papers written and going on to study further and doing a master's, having an MBA, having a PhD, becoming a professor is reward enough. But a creative, that's not rewarding for them. What is truly rewarding for a creative is having the opportunity to do, having the opportunity to break stuff, having the opportunity to deconstruct without having to explain to anybody why. It's the freedom. The freedom is the biggest achievement of a creative mind. Not the position, not the position, not the tenor, not any of those things that are highly regarded in academic environments. The true creative doesn't care about those things. It's the freedom to express. So when you see people that are creative, don't confuse them for intelligent people. Don't confuse them for intelligent people. Intelligent people are able to learn why, and they're able to articulate why. That's why they do good in exams. They are good at noticing the facts. When you see those people, encourage them. Oh, you might want to do a master's or a PhD or stuff like that. But when you see a creative person, don't advise them to go and get a degree or to rise to a particular position. I think one thing you can do with creative people is to watch them. Is to watch them. Get out of their way. Get out of their way and allow them do. Allow them talk when they feel like talking, and allow them be silent when they want to be. Stop asking them why. If you think it is beautiful, tell them it is beautiful, but don't ask them why they made it so beautiful or how they made it so beautiful. Do this and watch the creative person thrive. And for the creative person listening to me today, be careful of those traps. When your creativity starts getting visibility, you are going to be invited to teach. Try not to teach and try to invite people to observe. Try not to teach and try to have more discussions. You see, a teacher is somebody that tells you why. But we must never forget that a teacher is also someone that shows you why not. Choose what kind of teacher you are. Are you a why teacher or are you a why not teacher? One is articulate, the other is expressive. One constructs, the other deconstructs. One thrives on structure, the other thrives on play. One looks and goes after answers, the other goes after freedom. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and you've been listening to my podcast, ProUp Masterclass.